There comes a point in every creator's journey where the entire game changes. Not gradually, not in increments, but in a way that permanently shifts how you relate to reality itself. And it doesn't happen because of a technique, a method, or a burst of discipline. It happens because of one realization, so foundational that it reorganizes everything that comes after it. You realize that you are not the character navigating life. You are the consciousness in which the character appears. And when this truth lands, you stop trying to manipulate external circumstances and start shaping the level that determines them. You stop chasing outcomes, and outcomes begin rearranging themselves according to the identity that you embody. This is the pivot point, where manifestation stops being effort and becomes expression. The moment you stop identifying with the character's limitations, something profound occurs. Life becomes responsive, fluid, precise. Things show up faster. Synchronicities multiply. Guidance stops being subtle and becomes obvious. Not because you're suddenly more deserving, but because consciousness is finally leading instead of personality. That shift from personhood to presence is where conscious creation actually begins. And today, Lynn and I are going to break down exactly why that shift is the axis of all manifestation and how it transforms your relationship with reality at every level.
What Paul just described is the turning point every reality creator eventually encounters. The moment you understand that everything you can observe is not you. You can observe your thoughts, so you're not your thoughts. You can observe your emotions, so you're not your emotions. You can observe identity, memory, conditioning, and circumstance. None of these are you. What remains is the one who sees, the silent awareness behind the movement of life. That witnessing presence is consciousness, and that consciousness is who you truly are. This is more than philosophy, it's actually the governing principle behind every timeline shift, every manifestation, every synchronicity that shows up on your path. When Neville said, "The world is consciousness objectified," this is exactly what he meant. Your dominant identity, the one you embody consistently, becomes the organizing principle of your experience. You don't attract things, you select realities through consciousness. And that's why evidence starts following you instead of the other way around. It's why outcomes adjust themselves without strain. Once you operate as consciousness rather than personality, you move from "I hope this works" into "I know what reality is responding to." That's when conscious creation goes from theoretical to practical, from slow to immediate, from unpredictable to precise.
Now, here's the part that most people never recognize. Consciousness doesn't respond to personality. It responds to identity. Personality hopes, fears, doubts, contracts, expands, and contradicts itself. And the universe doesn't reorganize around contradiction, but consciousness is stable, unchanging, quiet, clear. It doesn't negotiate with circumstances or argue with logic. It simply expresses itself. When you shift identity, even subtly, the universe responds to that shift immediately. Not later, not eventually, immediately. And the first sign is always synchronicity. Synchronicity is the universe confirming the timeline that you've tuned into. It's reality saying, yes, this is the version of you that's active now. That's why the moment your inner identity changes, you start seeing repeating numbers, overhearing perfect answers, receiving unexpected messages, or stumbling into situations that align too perfectly to dismiss. This isn't magic. This is mechanics. This is consciousness interacting with the field. Quantum physics tells us that the observer collapses potential into form, and you are that observer. Not the character, but consciousness itself. Reality doesn't exist independently of the awareness interacting with it. Consciousness is selecting, collapsing, and experiencing one version of reality out of infinite possibilities. And the more coherent your state, the more synchronized your world becomes.
That's a crucial distinction. Synchronicity isn't coincidence, it's communication, it's feedback, it's alignment expressing itself through your physical environment. And there's something important to add here. Synchronicity doesn't show up because you're doing something right, it shows up because your consciousness has stabilized into a new identity. This is why people who try to manifest often struggle. They're trying to manifest as the character, from effort, from fear, from contradiction. But the character isn't the creator. The character is the creation. When you operate from the character's perspective, everything feels heavy and resistant because you're creating from limitation. But when you operate as consciousness, the entire field responds to your state as the organizing force. And the change is unmistakable. Questions get answered before you ask them. People will show up at the exact moment they're needed. Obstacles dissolve without confrontation. Solutions arrive without planning. You think of someone and they reach out to you. Not because you pushed harder, but because consciousness selected the timeline where those outcomes already existed. And this is why creation stops being effortful. Consciousness doesn't force reality, it expresses reality. And expression is effortless.
One of the most misunderstood aspects of conscious creation is the belief that manifestation requires constant monitoring, watching your thoughts, regulating your emotions, forcing positivity, maintaining a perfect state. But that's all character level activity. That's the mind trying to control the mind. And when you approach manifestation like that, you get exhausted because you're operating from the wrong level of identity. Consciousness doesn't micromanage. Consciousness selects. Identity selects. You don't manifest through force, you manifest through assumption. An assumption is not a mental chat, it's an identity position. It's the version of yourself that you regard as normal. Your normal is what the universe calibrates to, not your affirmations, not your mood swings, not your occasional visualizations, but your baseline state of being. When Neville said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he wasn't telling people to perform an emotional exercise. He was pointing to identity. Assume the identity of the one who already is, not the one who hopes to become. When assumption becomes natural, manifestation becomes instant. That is why the deepest shifts don't happen through constant effort. They happen through coherence. When your inner identity stabilizes, reality reorganizes automatically.
This is so important because it reveals the real mechanism of manifestation. Identity is the frequency reality obeys. And identity isn't psychological, it's energetic, it's vibrational, it's the signature you broadcast to the field. If you believe you're overlooked, life mirrors that. If you believe you're guided, life mirrors that. If you believe you're limited, life mirrors that. If you believe your consciousness, life mirrors coherence, synchronicity, clarity, and support. Reality doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to who you are being. And here's the liberating part: you don't need to become a new person, you only need to stop identifying with the old one. The moment you stop identifying with the character's limitations lose power. Thoughts lose power, doubt loses power, fear loses power. You begin operating from the level of awareness rather than the fluctuations inside awareness. And from that position, everything changes because you're no longer trying to control your mind, you're observing it. You're no longer trying to manifest outcomes, you're selecting timelines. And when identity aligns with your desired experience, synchronicity becomes constant. The universe starts speaking in real time through events, timing, symbols, and people. It becomes unmistakable.
Let's go deeper into synchronicity because this is where people finally understand that reality isn't random, it's responsive. Synchronicity is not luck, it's not coincidence, it's a recalibration signal. When your identity changes, reality must shift to match it because the external world is an echo of consciousness. This is why sudden clarity arrives after weeks of confusion. It's why someone who ghosted you suddenly reappears with a completely different tone. It's why opportunities show up 6 hours after you stopped doubting. It's why support flows in the moment you relax into certainty. You didn't attract any of this. Your consciousness selected a version of reality in which those things were already true. This is what quantum physics means when it says that the observer collapses potential into form. Consciousness isn't inside the world is inside consciousness. The world is appearing within the field of awareness, your field of awareness. And this is where manifestation becomes predictable. The more coherent you are, the more synchronized that your world becomes. The more divided you are, the more chaotic that your world feels. Synchronicity is simply the world reorganizing around the identity that you're embodying right now.
And I want to highlight something that people often miss. Synchronicity isn't just confirmation, it's communication. It's the mechanism through which consciousness dialogues with itself. Every synchronicity is an echo of your inner state. It's evidence that the shift within you has already taken effect. This is why when you stabilize into a new identity, everything feels lighter. Solutions feel obvious. Your intuition gets louder. Obstacles dissolve without direct action. You feel guided, not metaphorically, but tangibly. The field starts moving pieces on your behalf. You think of a question and somebody nearby says the answer out loud. You wonder about a decision and a stranger's conversation gives you clarity. You soften your anxiety and the situation resolves itself. You embody certainty and life becomes cooperative in ways that make you smile. And none of that is accidental, and none of that is a coincidence. It's consciousness reflecting consciousness. And this is why living as consciousness, rather than as the character, is the end of effort. Effort belongs to the character. Selection belongs to awareness. Once you recognize that, creation becomes natural, fluid, and deeply supported.
There's a moment in this journey where you stop seeking signs and start recognizing that signs are seeking you. You shift from chasing evidence to understanding that evidence is the natural echo of your identity. And when this realization matures, something beautiful happens. You no longer try to force the universe into cooperation. You simply begin to collaborate with it. Because the intelligence that you feel inside yourself is the same intelligence expressing itself as the universe around you. There is no separation. The field is not external, it's intradimensional consciousness communicating with itself. When you move in certainty, the field moves with you. This is why the greatest breakthrough happens. It's when you stop asking life to prove your power and begin expressing that power naturally. You stop needing reassurance. You stop needing the world to behave a certain way. You stop needing the timeline to show you something before you believe it. Creation becomes an inside-out phenomena. Identity leads, reality follows. And the moment you realize this, the whole relationship with life becomes cooperative instead adversarial. You're not fighting the universe, you're shaping it. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the sober understanding that the character never did the creating. The character only experiences what consciousness chooses.
In my opinion, this is one of the most liberating insights you can ever embody. You do not create alone. The universe is not something you command, it's something you harmonize with. Every synchronicity, every moment of guidance, every intuitive impulse is the field responding to the identity you're holding. When you start experiencing life consciously, life feels different. There's a steadiness in you, a groundedness, a sense of inner authority that doesn't need theatrics. You're not reactive, you don't collapse into doubt at the first sign of discomfort. You stop outsourcing your power. Instead, you develop a quiet inner knowing, the kind that doesn't shout but doesn't shake. You become someone who doesn't chase outcomes. And ironically, that's exactly when outcomes start accelerating, because consciousness isn't fractured anymore. When you settle into the identity of the one who already has, the field begins arranging itself without hesitation. People shift their tone, circumstances soften, opportunities align, the timeline reorganizes, and none of this happens because you manipulated anything. It happens because consciousness stabilized. Your presence becomes magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anything, but because you're finally operating from coherence rather than contradiction.
Let's bring this into the realm of everyday experience, because this isn't meant to be abstract or philosophical. Consciousness communicates through synchronicity constantly. We're just not trained to notice it. Think of the moments when you've softened into certainty and something resolved itself without action, or at the times when clarity arrived at the same moment. That you stopped forcing a solution, or when a person you'd been thinking about suddenly reached out. These moments are not quirks, they're reflections. They're evidence that you've turned into a different version of reality. Consciousness doesn't wait weeks or months to respond. The response is immediate. The physical manifestation simply unfolds as quickly as the timeline allows. And when you realize this, you stop needing spiritual theatrics. You stop needing rituals to feel powerful. You stop relying on constant mental techniques. You stop trying to fix the character. Instead, you return to the most fundamental truth. You are the awareness experiencing the character, not the character trying to become aware. This flips the entire paradigm. You no longer fight with your thoughts. You no longer fear your emotions. You no longer negotiate with circumstances. You operate from that level where none of these have authority over you. And from that position, creation becomes natural.
As we close this conversation, I want to bring everything into one clear, grounded understanding. The journey of conscious creation is not about upgrading the character. It's about remembering that you were never the character in the first place. Everything you observe, thoughts, emotion, memories, desires, doubts, circumstances, all of it appears inside consciousness. And consciousness is who you are. The character is an expression, not an identity. When you stop identifying with the character, you stop fighting battles that were never yours. And in that space, your power becomes effortless. You're not forcing belief, you're not performing spiritual discipline, you're not monitoring your mind, you're not trying to be positive. You're simply living as the awareness that shapes timelines through identity. You're living as the consciousness that reality responds to. You're living as the source, not the seeker. And from this position, synchronicity becomes constant. Guidance becomes clear. Outcomes become responsive. Timeline shifts become natural. You stop needing the universe to prove anything to you. You start embodying the truth that the universe and consciousness are not two separate forces. They are the same field expressing itself through different angles of awareness. This is the moment where conscious creation becomes effortless. This is a point where identity becomes your method. And this is the threshold where you step into the life that already exists with a version of you who remembers who they truly are.
Before we completely wrap it up, I want to leave you with a simple invitation. Stay connected to this work. If today's conversation opened something new for you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who's ready for deeper understanding, and tap the bell so that you never miss an episode. Your engagement helps these teachings reach the people who are meant to hear them. And it allows us to keep expanding these conversations with you. So until next time, think differently, dream boldly, and create consciously.